Hello! Welcome to my channel, Edible Thoughts Makes. My name is Stephanie and this channel is where I share with you my works in progress, finished projects, things I'm cooking up, books I'm reading, funny things my kids may say. My hope is that as you watch this episode and the previous episodes that you find some inspiration along the way. This is episode 101 and we are at the very end of February year 2023. I am coming to you from a very sloshy, icy, snowy Minnesota, where I live with my husband and our 2 young children. And yeah, we got a big snow dump last week. Not as big as what the meteorologists were predicting. We still got about 15 to 18 inches of snow, but I think we were expecting like more than 2 feet of snow. So I know a lot of the locals were semi-disappointed, but still happy with the amount of snow that we got. Today is just like an icy, sloshy mess out there, which means tomorrow will be awful on the roads because it will all freeze into a sheet of ice overnight, and it'll be so slippery and dangerous in the morning. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. Welcome. Thank you for joining me here today. I know it's been a little while. It has been several weeks. I was last here to chat about projects, at least, beginning of February. And then I inserted 2 new episodes called Maker Musings. And if you click on the playlist tab here, you'll see I have created one for Maker Musings. And those ones are a new thing that I'm trying out. I wanted to have a space that was more casual, minimal editing on my end, 30 minutes or less, which also means uploading and all of that stuff goes quicker, again, on my end. And I am basically knitting while I talk to you about things that are on my mind. Usually, I think I'm going to try to limit it to 3 topics max, again, because I want to limit it to 30 minutes or less. And if you're wondering why 30 minutes or less, part of it is, you could just go on and on and on and talk about whatever, right? But a lot of it has to do with the processing behind the scenes on my end. Video creating is very time consuming, and you can love something and have it be time consuming and stressful at times, right? So I just wanted a way that I could still get what was on my mind, off my chest, things that I want to talk about related to making, and not necessarily just off my chest. I didn't want to make it sound like they're just like rants or anything. That's not what I mean, but just topics that I want to either explore more or talk about or frequently asked questions or whatever the case may be, things like that I wanted to touch on, but in a more casual setting. And so feel free to check those out if that interests you. I will try to, like, as succinctly as possible in the title put whatever topics that I'm talking about, but that's not always the easiest thing to do. So that will be there, and no scheduled timeline for those. I will pop them up when I have the time and the energy and the ability to wrangle my thoughts into something that hopefully is a little more coherent and tangible, and that's where I will put those. So yeah, that's something fun that I started. So so I have been here just, not in a I don't know, project sharing capacity for a couple of weeks. That being said, I do have several things to talk to you about today. 3 of the items are not with me, so hopefully I can pop a picture on the screen when we get to talking about that kind of stuff. Yeah. Oh, and I guess now would be a good time to say, if you are new here, the way I usually format these videos are I have a vlog in the beginning, which is a compilation of little snippets throughout from whenever the last time is I recorded to now, or till, the next video. And then I go into an intro thing where it's kind of a little life chat and rundown of how things go around here. The weather update is usually in this section because I love talking about the weather. And then we go into finished projects, and then works in progress, and then eats and reads section on things I'm cooking up, books I'm reading, stuff like that. And then I I think I've only tried this out once or twice, I can't really remember, but another section for food for thought that might just be like a fun question that I have for you, and that might pop up sometimes and might not. We'll just kind of see, go with the flow on how that goes. But I know that at some points I had that kind of discussion element at the end of the Eats and Reads, and then I realized that for anybody that might be skipping the Eats and Reads section, that they miss out on that without realizing it, because, well, it's not part of it. I mean, it ends up being lumped in as part of it, but if someone skipped that section, they just missed that conversation. Anyway, I do put timestamps in for the different sections because I find it helpful personally if I'm watching an episode in separate sections or like in chunks throughout a day or a week or whatever, that it's a little easier for me to find things. But also, it just, I don't know, if you have 15 minutes here and there, it's just like an easier way to break things up. So, timestamps. I do use Ravelry for my project pages, so those will be linked in the description box below this video. You sometimes have to click show more or read more or something like that in order to expand that to see the box. But links to designers, makers, things like that will all be in the description box below this video as well. Yeah, I think that's it for that. And then my videos all include closed captioning, so you can click that CC button on the screen and that will show you the captions. YouTube does provide automatic captioning, and that can take anywhere from a couple hours to a couple of days. And so once that's up, then I go in and I edit those captions because things don't always make sense. It's automated by like a computer program or whatever, I don't know what you call it. And oftentimes words get mixed up. So I'm not going to say those words because then I'm going to have to go in and edit them. But I will have to edit them at some point eventually anyway. But there's just certain words that always get mixed up and I always have to change it. And that way things make sense. But yes, so that's there. Sometimes I speak much faster or much slower than anybody likes. And you can adjust that too on YouTube. There's like a speed setting and you can go faster, you can go slower. So that's there for you. And I think that's it for that. The first project I'm going to talk about today is the one that I am wearing. Let me put my tea down and stand up so I can show it to you. So this is the Sheep Camp Sweater by designer Jennifer Berg. Jennifer is an indigenous designer. She is Navajo, and this pattern has significance to her. It was designed in, or no, sorry, it was published in March 2021, and she was inspired by her grandmother who used to herd sheep. And she wanted these arrow motifs to symbolize, to signify like breathing, like deep inhale and long slow exhales. And I love this sweater. I think it's so comfy. Now you'll see it has a very deep yoke, and part of that is because my row gauge was off. But even without my row gauge off, if looking at the schematics, the yoke is pretty deep. But yeah, mine ended up even deeper because my row gauge was off. But yeah, the pattern comes in, is that 9 sizes? Let me count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, 9 sizes. The smallest circumference is 36 inches and the largest circumference is 70.5 inches. It is size inclusive and it's designed to be worn with 6 to 8 inches of positive ease. And mine came out to be, I think, 10 inches of positive ease, again, because my gauge was off. And I knew it was going to be, sorry, I'm getting my project notebook here. Based on my my swatch, I knew that my gauge was going to be off, and but I wasn't entirely sure how my colorwork gauge would turn out to be. But yeah, it ended up being off and it ended up being fine. I was going for an oversized sweater and I did make some modifications. So for the neckline here, it is a rolled neckline in the pattern. I did an extra 2 rows for the short rows because I just knew that if it was going to end up being a little bigger, I just wanted to make sure it sat up a little bit higher in the back. So you can see there's like more of this gray fabric in the back here than in the front, and that's due to the short rows. And short row shaping is important because we are not like a flat cardboard tube or box or whatever, so there's more body here. And so to keep the sweater from just, you know, being way up here and then low back there or however, short row shaping is important. I lengthened the body like at least double. It's meant to be cropped, and I think that's a really cute look too, but then with the deep yoke, if it was cropped, I didn't want to be like restricted in how my arms could move. So knowing that it was going to be like that, if I raise my arm, if the cropped hem would be like way up in my rib cage basically, and I didn't want that. So how I decided how long I wanted my body to be is I raised my arm and then figured out like where the hem I wanted it to hit, and I wanted it to hit like, you know, below my hip bone, and so that's how long I knit it to be, and it worked out perfectly for me. I also modified the sleeves. Sleeves are tapered and 3/4 length, and I knew I wanted full length sleeves, so I did not taper them. I just knit the same stitch count all the way down until I knew where I wanted to start for the cuffs, and then I did a rapid decrease down to whatever the stitch count is for the cuffs, and then I knit the cuffs. So I think those were my main modifications. Maybe I'll sit down now so you can see my face while I'm talking to you. The pattern is written for DK weight yarn, and the yarn that Jennifer used in hers, I believe is a lighter DK weight. Yeah, it's 245 yards for 100 grams. And so I actually used Pearl Soho Linen Quill fingering weight held double. And holding that double did give me a bigger gauge than the pattern. And again, I knew that it was going to be that way ahead of time, so whatever yarn you decide to use, I just recommend swatching or just know your gauge so that either you can make adjustments as you are knitting it, or you just won't be surprised at the end with whatever your result is. So I use the colors Pale Mushroom. Pale Mushroom is my main color here. It's kind of a warm taupey gray, not even really taupey, like a light warm gray. And it's got some slight heathering to it. I would not say it's a flat color at all. And then my contrast color is Juniper Green, and this is such a pretty green. I'm not sure it's going to capture all of the nuance in it, but there's different shades of green within, and it just really glows in the sunlight, and I just love this green. I think it's so beautiful. So because of all of my modifications, I did end up using a lot more yarn than the pattern recommends as well, and I knew that going into it. This yarn, I don't remember which one I purchased when, but sometime between 2021 and 2022, I had collected these yarns through Pearl Soho sales, and I initially was going to do a half and half triangles wrap with it, but decided I wanted it in this sweater, and I'm really glad I did it this way. I was inspired by evergreens. I love pine trees. I love how they smell. I love how they sway in the wind. I just love how they provide that greenery in the middle of winter. Yeah, I just love the woods. And these arrows remind me of pine trees. So I don't know if I mentioned it, but I did knit size A, which is the smallest size, but again, because of my gauge difference, I ended up with a size probably between A and B. Yeah, so I'm really happy with how it turned out. I did use the recommended needle sizes, which are US 6 or 4 millimeter for the neck and cuffs, and then US 7, which is a 4.5 millimeter for the main stockinette, as well as for the colorwork portion. I did not change needle sizes for the colorwork portion. In the pattern, she does tell you the 2 different gauges for the stockinette versus the colorwork section. And it is different, and she does not change needle sizes for it. So I'm assuming it's accounted for then, and that's why. I don't really know. But I did not find, any puckering or any issues with my color work. There are some floats to catch, like in this bigger main color section. Yeah. And I'm trying to think, I think someone asked me if it would be a beginner friendly like color work pattern. And what I would say is that a sweater I do not consider to be beginner friendly color work because it has to fit a certain way, right? And so if you're doing color work for the first time, I would recommend doing like a cowl where there's no increases, no decreases for color work, or even a hat, because oftentimes if the color work is just like, again, similar to a cowl with no increases, decreases, but then if you wanted to practice the increase, decrease parts, if some colorwork hats have it going all the way into the crown, then you can at least practice that there. For a sweater, I just feel like it's different because if your gauge changes significantly, it's like a lot more fabric that you're working through than a cowl, and fit is going to really matter. And so, for example, if you did not want a deep yoke, and you hadn't studied the schematic or figured out your gauge and how that would change the measurements, that could be really frustrating, right? That you've spent like days and days and days on this project to have something that doesn't fit right, and you used like all this yarn and it's a big investment, and you see where I'm going? So I feel like hat or cowl is a much more beginner-friendly color work project than the yoke of a sweater. All right, the next item I'd like to talk about, I don't have on hand because my daughter wore it to school, and they are the fingerless mitts that I had shown, I think, the start of last time. And I will pop a picture here on the screen of them finished and blocking on wooden sock blockers. And they turned out really nice. The pattern I modified were Everything November Mitts by Jen Yard of Everything Shapes Us, and it is a paid for pattern, so I will not be going into details on it, but they are fingerless mitts, and that particular pattern is a fingering weight pattern written for one size, but I modified it for a child. So I just cast on less stitches based on her hand circumference, and I knit the gusset a little bit shorter, and then overall I just knit everything slightly smaller. So I just shrunk everything down a little bit, and they fit really well on her, and she loves them. And the yarn was dyed by my friend Beth of Deciduous Knits, and it's this like deep fuchsia magenta color, and there's some sparkle in it, and they were inspired by my garden peonies, which we will see in like 4 months from now. So yeah, they turn out really nicely, and both of my kids wear their fingerless mitts to school pretty much every day, and so it's nice that they have a couple pairs to rotate through so I can wash them sometimes. But yeah, so it turned out really nice. I ended up using about 26 grams of yarn for her fingerless mitts. So if you have yarn like 50 grams or less of fingering weight yarn around, I think that you can pretty easily knit a pair of fingerless mitts. For adult, I feel like, I definitely used less than 50 grams for making my own too. And I don't remember what the pattern says in there, but I think it's a really fun project, a blank canvas, if you will, to use up little itty bitty bits of yarn. I'm talking like 5 grams or less. You color block it or stripe it and stuff like that. So for hers, they're just solid, which I think look really nice. It's a tonal yarn, and yeah, so she loves it. So that's that project. The next one, I'm also going to pop a picture here because I also don't have it. They are another pair of mitts. Well, no, these are mittens. They are fully covered. They are the World's Simplest Mittens by Tin Can Knits, and I knit a pair of mittens for my mom. And I marled yarns from the last 3 years of the Farmer's Daughter Fibers Sock Squad subscription, and I used like a main color to hold for like throughout, and then I swapped out like the little bits throughout to kind of color block it. And I have the yarns here. So this is the main color that I held, and I believe this one's called Prairie Dog Playground, and this is the Highwood sock base. That's an 80/20 superwash merino nylon blend. And it's this like tan color with orangey, rusty speckles in it. So a really nice neutral. And then the other yarns I used, actually these three, this is what I have left. And these are all January Sock Squad yarns from, let's see, this peachy orange one is from January 2021. This yellow is from January 2022. And this light blue is from January 2023. And then I had a fourth color in there, but I actually used up every last bit of it. So there's nothing to show you from that. I believe that one was from the Bison colorway, which was July 2022 maybe, or June 2022. Anyway, I'm not sure. So these are all yarns remaining from previous projects that I knit into these mittens for my mom. I marled them. She loves it. I knit, I think, the adult medium and followed the worsted numbers. I believe that's what I did. And then I used US 5 for the cuff and US 7 for the main fabric. They fit really well. I knit an extra long cuff. She can fold it or just keep it long so that wind does not get into her winter coat if she's like reaching for things and doing stuff, you know, not just standing there. So she loves her mittens and I don't have them, and so hopefully the picture has been here on the screen for you to see what they look like. We are going to move on to finished projects that I do have in hand right now. And you know, with the number of finished projects I have to share with you today, I think we're just going to say works in progress for another episode. Otherwise, we will be here forever. Let's go into socks. Dun, da, 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 dun, da, da, da. Okay, these are socks that were requested by our youngest. And she had a specific color palette in mind. And she wanted a certain order for the colors, and I cannot remember if I had started these when we talked last. I must have started them already. Yeah, I did, because I started them like in January. So yes, she picked out the colors. I separate my like little bits of yarn by cool and warm in like a small bin. And so she gravitated towards the cool colors, and this is what she wanted. And I love how they turned out. I did a Knit One Purl One rib for the cuff, and then I did a 3x1 rib for the rest of the sock, and a shadow wrap heel. And yeah, I think they're beautiful. I knit them on US 1 or 2.25mm needles. All the yarn used was light fingering weight, so like 437 to 463 yards for 100 grams. And on a US 1 needle, that gives me usually a 9 stitches per inch gauge. And being that my kids are, I mean, they live in their socks, and so they're not treated like precious things around here. I want them to wear them. If I'm going to make it for them, they're going to wear them, right? And so the tighter the gauge, the better, because then they will wear better over time, right? Yeah, so 9 stitches. We're at 9 stitches per inch here. I cast on 56 stitches so that I would end up with, wait, is that what I did? I think that's what I did. And okay, and then that would end up with, I think, 6-inch circumference. And then the ribbing, though, brings it in a little bit. And her foot size, she has a 6.5-inch foot circumference, 6.5-inch foot length. And her shoe size is like a youth 11, 12, somewhere in there. But yes, each stripe uses up like less than 2 grams, 1.5 to 2 grams. And so if you have little bits of yarn, making a striped sock can be a great way to do that. I weave in my ends as I go. I do have a tutorial for that here on YouTube. And then when I do the color change, I knit around and omit the pearls, and then on the next round I go back to following my ribbing pattern sequence, I don't know what you call it. Anyway, and that just omits like that little pearl bump in the color change, which doesn't really matter, it's purely cosmetic. So if it doesn't bother you and you want to just do it, just continue doing the rib the way it's written, or not written, the way it is, I don't know, you can do that. But I also find it just kind of a smoother transition for weaving in my ends as I go, also if I have that knit round. But yeah, so what else to say about these? I used about 40 grams of yarn total for her socks, and they're so cute, and she's worn them a bunch of times already, and I had to hide them in order to talk about them here, otherwise she probably would have worn them to school today too. Next pair of socks are for me. Oh, aren't they lovely? This color is so pretty. It's like an earthy pink, variegated, and these are the 2023 February Farmer's Daughter Fibers Sock Squad sock set, except I didn't use the mini. This is the main color, and it's called Bitterroot. Let me grab the calendar off the wall. So like I had mentioned, this year's subscription is based on wildflowers and their pollinators. And we are in February, and this is Bitterroot and the Bumblebee. I just love these illustrations. I love that there's a sneak peek to the upcoming colorway, and I just love artists working on top of each other's creative energies and the synergy that comes out of it. And yeah, I just love it. So with my socks, I think I mentioned last time I was going to knit the Kindling socks by Lindsay of Larkspur Knits. Well, I started that way, and then I kind of forgot to do the garter texture band, and then I decided I wasn't ripping back. And then I decided I wanted them to be shorter socks, and so I stopped the leg, and then I realized I hadn't knit like a heel flap and gusset in a while, and so I wanted to do that. And one that I really like is this from the Spring Rain Socks pattern that I tested for Natasha of Northern Knits and Pearl a while back. So I did that heel flap. And so I knit the whole thing on the 9-inch circulars, but then when I switch to doing like a heel flap when it's not like a short row heel, I will do that on double pointed needles. I just find that there's less stuff in the way, and so my 9-inch circulars are holding the instep half of the needles while I'm using double pointed needles to work the heel flap. And then I do the heel turn, and then when I'm back on the gusset, I knit back the stitches back onto the 9-inch circulars. So then I do that for the rest of it, and when I get to the toe, I switch to 32-inch needles, magic loop, and do the toe. Now you may think that's a lot of needles for one pair of socks, and you know what? You don't have to do it that way. You could do the entire thing on magic loop and be just fine, or double pointed needles and be just fine. This is just what I like to do. I have the tools available. This is what works for me, so that's what I do. And yeah, I really like how they turned out. I think they're comfortable. I like the height. It's 5 inches from the bottom of the heel to the cast on edge, and I think they are going to be perfect socks to wear in the springtime. This is a new base for Sock Squad. It is Rocky Mountain Pearls, and it's an 80% superwash blue face Leicester, 20% nylon. It doesn't feel as like soft as the merino, and I think in a good way for socks, because socks have a lot of friction. I mean, when you're wearing them, right, there's a lot of friction. It's better for them to be hard wearing, and I feel like with this fiber content it actually gets softer over time, but not to the point of like wearing holes into it easily. Like I feel like merinos and stuff, they do wear to be softer over time, but they also wear out, and so they're just so soft that the fiber doesn't hold up as well. And so the Blueface Leicester yarn I feel like holds up really well. So yeah, I'm excited to be wearing these socks more in the spring. Alright, sorry for that abrupt ending earlier. The battery kind of died, the washing machine sounded like it was about to take off, so I took the opportunity to swap out laundry, make some new tea, and kind of re-situate here. So yes, I'm back from my little mini break. And I have one more finished project to show you. Oh, I'm so excited about this one. We've talked about it quite a bit in the past, and here it is. This is my academic vest by Ellie of Skandir Knits, and I'm not doing an outfit change. I'm just gonna wear it the next time. I have not taken like official finished project photos wearing it yet with different outfits, but I will tell you that it fits really well. The intended ease for the pattern I think is like 0 to 2 inches, but I wanted a little more ease, so I think mine has like maybe closer to 3 inches of positive ease. But I just adore it. It's so lovely. The pattern comes in 16 sizes, which is good because if your fit is going to be like 0 to 2 inches, that's a pretty small window, so I feel like you should have a lot of sizes offered, otherwise it would be really hard to fit within that recommendation. But the gauge is 24 stitches by 32 rounds in 4 inches of stranded color work. It is all over stranded color work. It is knit bottom up in the round, and there's steeking involved, and it was my first time with steeking, and I will tell you, I was not scared about the steeking part. I was more apprehensive about setting up for the steeking, because as long as I set it up correctly, there shouldn't be any issues with cutting into my knitting, right? So it was more the prep part, and as long as I could do that fine, I felt pretty confident about the cutting. And it was so much fun, and it went so smoothly, and it was like these magical transformations throughout. It was just so much fun. And the bottom rib band probably took me the longest, and I did go down a needle size from the pattern recommendation needles. Pattern uses US 6 and US 2.5, so I used a US 2 for the ribbing and a US 5. So 2.75 millimeter for the ribbing and a 3.75 millimeter for the color work. And I knit the size 4, and I did do something different for the neckband and the armbands. I picked up more stitches because I was just hesitant about having this armband area be too tight, too high up. So I just picked up more stitches. I thought I wrote it down somewhere. Well, anyway, I picked up for like a larger size, basically. And you can do that because it just has to do with how many like stitches. So instead of maybe picking up every 3 stitches, you might pick up every like 4 or something. Anyway, I don't know if I'm explaining that well. But another thing that I did slightly differently was near the end, I just couldn't do the color work anymore. Not because I don't like color work, but because between like all of the steek stitches and then the decreases and stuff, keeping track of where you are in the color work can get a little confusing. So I just decided to finish it off in the main color, which I really liked. I wanted to get to this teal little motif here because that's what starts it on the bottom. And then since the bottom is the solid also, I thought it just kind of worked out well and it balanced out nicely. For the steeks, I ended up doing 3 different reinforcements just to try them out. It's probably not necessary to do that many. Let's see here. You can see my floats. Here you go. And most of my ends are woven in, some are not, and they're just going to kind of felt in, so I'm just not going to worry about it. But I did use a sewing machine to sew down the that part where I steeked, but I also felted it, and I also did a crochet chain. And I think you can see the crochet chain. So I did the crochet chain first before cutting it open, and then I felted it, and then I sewed it, or maybe I sewed it, then I felted it. Anyway, I don't even remember anymore, but it was a very smooth process, and I'm really happy with the end result. I'm going to flip it back out again. I can definitely see myself making another one. I found the process really enjoyable. I think what was also really nice is that I've always wanted to knit a colorwork vest. I wasn't thrilled about having to purl colorwork. I just feel like this process was very smooth because I'm knitting color work in the round the whole way. There are decreases for like the shaping and stuff, so you do have to kind of pay attention to where you are on the color work chart, and I would say that's the hardest part. And then like just making sure your steeped stitches carry both of the yarns over. Like there shouldn't be a float over the steek stitches. And so as you're shaping this part, you have steek stitches going down for the armbands, the neck band in the middle here, and then the other armband. So it ends up looking like this funny shaped tube before you cut it open. And it's funny, when I cut it open, it's almost like the vest sighed. It was like, ah, and then it looked like a vest. And that was super cool. My colors, again, okay, I used Pearl Soho's Good Wool. Sport weight yarn, 383 yards for 100 grams, 100% Andean Highland wool. It is, I would say, like, yardage-wise, it seems like a lighter sport weight, venturing into heavy fingering weight territory, but the yarn blooms really nicely where it like fills in those holes, right? So then on their website they say it can be up to like a DK weight, which I haven't tried knitting it in a DK weight pattern yet, but I have plans to, so I will share how that goes later. But my yarns here, this is my main color, Driftwood Gray. It's undyed, it's a light gray. And then I have Teal Twilight, which is a heathered teal color. Guava Earth is like a pink leaning orange. And then here is Pink Salt, which is a very pale peachy pink. And then I also have Fresh Loganberry, which is like a jammy, berry, plummy color. So these were my 5 colors. And as far as how to pick them, I'm not sure I can give you much advice, but looking at the color work, I knew that I needed high contrast, or not needed, I wanted high contrast, because some of the blips are only like 1 stitch. So if any of the colors were too close together, then that blip wouldn't be noticeable, and then what's the point of me having to carry so many colors if it's not going to be noticeable? You only knit with 2 colors at a time. But I guess not carry that many colors, but like manage so many colors if I'm not going to be able to tell the difference. I know some people do like the trick where you take a picture of it in black and white, and so you can see if there's difference there. I would say that works pretty well. I did not do it with this, so I don't really know what it would look like, but I think sometimes you also just have to look at how different your colors are, because, and what you want to put next to each other. So I knew for sure I wanted like the complementary colors here next to each other, so I knew I wanted this teal and guava, which is close to like a blue and orange, right? So then I would figure out in the chart, okay, which colors are put next to each other in this motif, so then I could decide what color I wanted to assign to that part. And then knowing like these blips here are just like 1 stitch, what is going to stand out most? So then I wanted to use this lightest color to be in that section. So not so much like how I chose the color, but maybe how I chose the color assignment, probably. But yeah, so I also think about like what I want my overall vibe to be. I didn't want it to be super springy. I didn't want it to be only autumnal or only wintry, definitely not summer. So these colors I felt like really go year round. I mean, again, I'm not going to wear a wool vest in the summer, but I feel like this color palette really works well together, and I can wear this with jeans and a button-up collared top underneath, a plaid button-up top underneath and jeans. I can wear this over a linen dress with sleeves, and yeah, I'm just really excited to style this vest and share that with you, probably on a future episode. And I will definitely, when I take the pictures, share them on my Instagram. Links to that are in the description box below, by the way. My Instagram is edible.thoughts.makes. But yeah, I'm just really excited to style this. I've never had a colorwork vest piece before, I don't think. I'm sure I've had one when I was little. I know my mom used to knit us wool vests. I'm not sure if they were ever colorwork. She said she had knit me like a green mohair one when I was little, but she couldn't find it. So I'm sure we have it in like the baby book or something like that. I'll have to look for it. But yes, my mom, if you didn't know, was a knitter. She doesn't knit anymore, but she used to knit, and I do have some precious pieces by her. I have a white or cream sweater vest by her that's cabled, and that was knit flat and seamed. And then I also have another highly textured sweater by her as well. But yeah, so I'm really excited to style this up and share that with you in a future episode. So I'm not sure how long this battery life is going to last, so there might be another abrupt break in here, we'll see. But like I mentioned earlier, we're going to save works in progress for a future episode. I did want to quickly talk a little bit about the books that I'm reading currently. I've been reading the Misawa series, and there are 3 books out so far, and of course the 4th book is coming out in the fall, and so now I have to wait for that one. But I think the last time I was here, I might have just started book 2. I'm not quite sure if I don't really remember it. Anyway, doesn't matter. I've read both book 2 and book 3 by now. Cover of the books should be here on the screen, hopefully, so you can kind of see what they look like. The series is by David A. Robertson, and he is an indigenous author, a member of the Norway House Cree Nation, and he currently lives in Winnipeg, Manitoba. And the book centers around 2 children who go into this other world through a portal, and it talks about their like life challenges and reconnecting with who they are and learning about themselves and learning about navigating through life's challenges and things like that. It is written for middle school level, and I have just really enjoyed it. I like the writing, I like the storytelling. Sometimes I wish there was like a little bit more like in-depth description or something to it. I don't know what it is. I don't know. It just might not be as in-depth of like intensity of description of some things as maybe that I'm looking for. I don't know. Not that I'm looking for. I don't know how to explain what I'm trying to say. Anyway, I really enjoy it. I finished book 3, book 4 coming out in the fall. So if that sounds like something you are interested in, I believe it's categorized under like sci-fi fantasy maybe. Yeah, go check it out. The other book that I picked up recently is When You Trap a Tiger by Tay Keller. She's a Korean-American author, and it's really good. The book is about 300 pages, I think, and I'm about halfway through. If you also, again, like the magical realism and storytelling, and this one kind of goes through some Korean folklore, and it talks about different relationships and the importance of storytelling and how it relates to culture and identity, and yeah, I really like this one too. Tay Keller is a new to me author, and I believe this book, let's see, when was it published? It's pretty new, 2020. It is a single book, so it's not part of a series, so after I finish it, I won't have to wait forever for another one. But yeah, I also highly recommend this book so far. I'm only halfway through, but I do really enjoy it. So with that, cheers to being creative. I hope you are doing well. I hope you are taking good care of yourselves, your loved ones, and your neighbors, and I will talk to you next time.